So I'd like to introduce Professor Richard D'Andrea, a leading researcher at UniSA's Acute Leukemia Lab within the Centre for Cancer Biology in the Bradley Building. So Professor D'Andrea is dedicated to advancing research in acute myeloid leukemia, AML, particularly in children, where treatment options remain limited. His work focuses on uncovering new therapies to improve outcomes for young patients, and Charlie's Rainbow proudly supports this vital research. Through his dedication and expertise, he is helping to shape the future of paediatric AML treatment, offering hope to families affected by this devastating disease. So we're honoured to have him here to share insights with us today. So please welcome Richard. So Richard, can you tell us about your area of expertise and what drew you to focus on childhood AML research?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for asking me to provide a few answers to these questions. So I trained in genetics and worked in the area of organism and tissue development for a while. And then early in my career, I moved into cancer biology, which is basically, due to a breakdown of the normal control of tissue growth and development. So it wasn't that much of a shift. And I focused on blood cancers when I moved to what was then called the Hansen Centre for Cancer Biology, which was a terrific research environment to be in. They had a number of leading researchers there working in related areas, so it was a really stimulating and a supportive environment for me to be in and develop my own interests. So I started my blood cancer research there. I spent several years also in a paediatric department and child health research centre, which was at the WCH Children's Hospital. So I've been interested in childhood cancers ever since being there at the Children's. And while I was there, I saw sort of firsthand what the families and the children went through who were dealing with childhood cancers. It was pretty hard to ignore and pretty hard not to want to improve the treatment and outcomes for kids with childhood cancers and families. So, and also in my career, I've connected with a number of wonderful clinicians, paediatric oncologists, hematologists, and some other treating clinicians. So with that background and the interactions that I'd built up in the blood cancer field, it was pretty motivating to use my expertise to make a difference for childhood AML.
Thank you. So you have gone into your story, I guess, behind why you pursue the work that you do, but do you have a personal connection with cancer that took you to that? Or what inspired you to actually move into the career of research?
Well, the move into research, I had a background in training in science, through genetics, like I said, and then into sort of cancer biology, cancer genetics. So my interest initially was in the sort of fundamental biology of cancer, trying to understand, what basically has gone wrong when normal cells become rewired to be cancer cells, trying to understand that and work out ways to sort of intervene and prevent the cancer from growing, but also became more interested in sort of the clinical side of things, I guess. We got more involved with the hematologists and the paediatric oncologists, like I said, so I became a bit more interested in doing translational research on blood cancers. Also worked for a while, I was closely associated, I was based in the hematology department actually, and for a while there associated with a group that was doing some really world-leading work on stem cell treatments for blood cancers and transplantation. So I had some close links with that group. So really that was the environment that set me up to look more at the translational studies and more clinical side, move sort of from the fundamental biology side to a slightly more clinical translational type of work and focus that on the blood cancers. Personal connections, I don't have a personal connection, obviously, apart from with you and your family with the childhood AML, but certainly over the years, as part of my work, I've interacted with a lot of AML families, families that have had AML and other AML patients, adult patients. and I have obviously personal connections with friends that I've lost to cancer, but not so much AML, but to cancer. So I think everyone has personal connections now with somebody that, especially once you get to my age, with somebody that's been affected by cancer. But certainly the interaction with you, your family, and the Zero Childhood Cancer group has brought me and the group a lot closer to that sort of childhood cancer setting and what the families in that are affected by childhood cancers are going through.
Yeah, it's such an eye-opener, isn't it? Seeing that side, and for myself as well, learning so much from you as well, from your side. It's been quite an eye-opener that way too. So looking back on your research journey, what have been some of your greatest moments or breakthroughs?
It's been a long journey, I can tell you that. So, well, there's a few things that I'm quite proud of over the time I've been in research. So when a while back I set up a study called the Australian Familial Hematological Cancer Study, which is AFCHS, AFCHS is the abbreviation. So set that up with a geneticist called Professor Hamish Scott, who's still here in Adelaide. We set that up when he moved to Adelaide back from overseas and being in Melbourne for a while. And the idea was to study families that have, multiple cases of blood cancers. And we identified some pretty amazing families, actually, to be honest. And Hamish especially has built that study up, now to have several families, and the genetics has become, over the years, super powerful, much more than it was 10, 15 years ago. So studying those families now can really reveal some major insights. But so we collected over the years information and patient, blood samples from patients in these families. It's obviously quite a complex process because you've got to consent, somebody, and consent the family, and get material and samples from patients. It's a huge amount of work, and Hamish is an exceptional geneticist, but that's resulted in some pretty major discoveries in terms about revealing, why some individuals are predisposed to getting blood cancers, and has led directly to new tests and that sort of thing, diagnostic tests to identify people in families that might be predisposed or to be affected by blood cancer. And that's been the track record now in Adelaide for those sort of genetic familial studies is pretty amazing, thanks largely to the way Hamish has built that up. So that's really been a major step for Adelaide and for some of the discoveries that have happened over the last decade or so in the AML field. And it was pretty pivotal to us getting involved with the Zero Childhood Cancer National Study, which is the childhood cancer study they're running out of Sydney and other states, because of basically because of the expertise here in Adelaide that we have and that Hamish has. So it's one of the reasons we became involved with that Zero Childhood Cancer group, because genetics is such a big part of that Zero Childhood Cancer study. So that whole familial cancer thing is something that I was very pleased to set up and see go so well. The other thing I set up over the course of my career was a conference called the New Directions in Leukemia Research Conference, which we set up in 2006 with myself and a couple of other scientists and a clinician. And that's really grown into what's now a internationally recognised research meeting. Happens every couple of years in Australia, and brings together international invited speakers with Australian people working on blood cancers. And it's just brilliant in terms of fostering collaboration in the field and getting the early and mid-career researchers exposed to all the leading scientists that are researching blood cancers. So it's and brings clinicians and scientists together, in a meeting for a few days, gets them all sort of basically in there interacting. The clinicians are hard to catch, so getting everyone together in sort of for a few days can be really useful. So that's a great meeting now, and that's still going, and hopefully we'll keep going for the next period going forward. So that's a great thing. And then my own work has been very collaborative over the years. That's one of the ways we do stuff. We collaborate. I really value collaborations. And I've been involved in a number of significant breakthroughs over the years in terms of the biology and the genetics of AML and other related blood cancers. And we're recognised here for the work we do with rare patient material. You know, we have very good collections of patient material here, mainly adult material here, but we have access to obviously some childhood material through the Queensland Children's Tumour Bank through Andy Moore up there. So, you know, we're recognised in our studies with patient material, which is not that easy to work with, you know, and also not that easy to get the sort of clinical information that is incredibly important as well to go with the studies that you do in the lab. So we're recognised for that sort of work, and that's been important in a number of studies where we've talked about, you know, what happens as relapse develops in some of these cases, you know, looking for the sorts of changes that have happened to the AML cells between diagnosis and when they relapse after treatment. Looked at made findings around the control of the leukemia stem cells, which are the cells that are really hard to eradicate with treatment. You know, they're the sort of cells that survive the treatment for various reasons, you know, and they then sit there for a while and then come back and drive relapse. So it's really important to understand them, and we've had some important studies on them. And then obviously the work we did around the childhood AML and talking about how the sort of a level of genetic predisposition type variants that you pick up in childhood AML, which is, you know, looking like it's sitting at around 15 to 18% of, you know, children with childhood AML have potentially some level of genetic predisposition there, which means, you know, there's potential to develop tests that might reveal risk associated with with kids getting AML, and provide some means for counselling and surveillance and that sort of thing, which is all part of the Zero Childhood Cancer Study and the collaborations we're doing there. So there's some important work still to do, I guess, is the message as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so amazing that, you know, this is happening, you know, in our own town in Adelaide, in SA. So we're just absolutely so honoured to be a part of this. So when UniSA, for those that don't know, UniSA gave me an option of 3 different professors, brought me into a room, and I actually got to handpick Richard myself after hearing what he was about and what he was researching, and I just felt that it really aligned with the changes and the difference that I wanted to make in other families' lives so that they don't have to go through what we did. So, Richard, when I chose your research team for the funding through Charlie's Rainbow, how did this feel? And did you ever imagine that 4 years later, we'd still be here and raising funds to support your work?
Oh, look, well, firstly, I can't quite believe it's been 4 years, but
I know, this is
that's gone incredibly quickly. But look, there wasn't. Kelly spoke. I spoke with Kelly, but it wasn't just me. There was some of my team were there as well, and the whole team was really quite excited to make that connection with Charlie's Rainbow and Kelly, and it really does mean a lot to the research group. You know, everyone, I think, in the group now feels very connected. And hearing Kelly's story and the story behind Charlie's Rainbow is just, it's just really impressive the way you talk about it, Kelly. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
And also just to hear about the support network that you have and the other families you've connected with, it is really quite inspiring. So yeah, it's great that we're still working together after 4 years. I'm really pleased about that. I think everyone around here is getting to know about Charlie's Rainbow. Yeah, we've had some other connections you've created for us, you know, with Cops for Kids and various other things. And I guess, you know, the importance of the funding is just, you know, really can't stress how important that is, just to get the continuity of having the funds there for the childhood AML work so that we can focus on doing the work and building the collaborations and all that sort of thing. It really is great to have that connection. And you know, even like you've helped us with grants and all sorts of things. So it's a really valuable connection we have now. And, you know, I really value it a lot.
Did you want to go into just a little bit more detail about the different funding that you've received?
Yes, I had certainly. I mean, obviously, and Charlie's Rainbow has been really important with this. I mean, I think we've mentioned before there's a couple of things I'll mention. First, I'll go from my notes here. But one of the things that Charlie's Rainbow was really important for was to recruit our PhD student Mumma Kel. So she's been after she's been going 18 months now, so she's basically halfway through a PhD. She's going really well, but the university, won't let you recruit PhD students unless you can show that you have funding to support the project. So in her case, she was good enough to get a university-funded scholarship, so we didn't have to use the Charlie's Rainbow funds to pay her directly, which we would have if we had to, but we didn't have to do that. But Charlie's Rainbow is certainly supporting her work and the project she's doing. So, and that is going really well. And then, as I've mentioned before, the grant that we got through Cancer Australia, which was 600,000, was very much, Charlie's Rainbow was very much part of getting that. Kelly's input was important for that as a patient family advocate. And also Charlie's Rainbow as a vehicle for the, increasing the profile of that work and getting the message out about that work was an important part of that grant as well. So that was a fabulous grant to get. It's been really important in us building this collaboration with the Zero Childhood Cancer Study, national study. It's allowed us to employ 2 new staff in the last 12 months. And it really is an important project in terms of understanding childhood AML, the genetics of childhood AML, and also, there are aspects of that grant which are related to improving the use of genetics in treatment, in setting up guidelines for clinicians for using all of the genetic information that's generated. So there's a lot in that grant, and it's a great collaboration that was really, really important for our group. There are some other grants we put in last year. As you probably remember, Kelly, we put one in, I think it was about the middle of last year, we still haven't heard about, which again, Charlie's Rainbow is important for that. So we've got fingers crossed for that one. And then we also got the grant from Inner Wheel. We built a bit of a relationship now with Inner Wheel around the childhood cancer. Inner Wheel, very passionate supporters of cord blood research, and cord blood's been really important it's been important for years in childhood AML as a source of stem cells for transplant, but even now over more recent years, it's known that cord blood has some very important immune cells in there that can fight cancers, and there's capacity to use those cord blood immune cells in therapy for cancers, childhood cancers, and particularly in childhood AML. I think that's a really important angle to investigate, and that's part of Mumma Kel's project. But we did get 65,000 from Inner Wheel Australia for that project as well. So, and you and I are talking to an Inner Wheel group in March, yes. Kelly, if you haven't forgotten.
yes, it's only a few weeks away.
A few weeks away, so we'll have to talk about that.
And I know when Charlie had his treatment, cord blood was more of a backup plan.
Yeah.
So knowing so much more about it, and as you learn more, I think that's brilliant that it's not really, it's, not going to just be the backup plan.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a lot more knowledge behind it, I guess, which is incredible.
It is, yeah. No, that's going to become really important more and more for the immune cells that are in the cord blood as well, I think. I'm
going to throw you a curveball, Richard.
Yes,
only,
I knew you would.
Because we're talking about cord blood. So I think about this all the time. And when we had the boys, there was the option of storing our cord blood, but it was at a huge expense. So we were just like, no, none of us are going to get cancer. We don't need to worry about that. So we didn't store it. But if we were to have stored Charlie's cord blood, would that have been something that would be used to help him, or would it have had the same genes in it so it wouldn't have actually helped him at all?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and I think you're sort of onto it there at the end. I think a clinician would be very reluctant to transplant an AML patient with their own cord blood cells for 2 reasons. Partly, like you say, because of the cord blood stems, they contain the blood stem cells. So, the risk that the AML will develop again is always there. And also the other thing that happens with cord blood transplants, or any blood stem cell transplant for leukemia, is that the the stem cells that come from even though they're from a matched donor, they might be from a sibling or a donor from a bank that's been matched for the transplant, there's still enough mismatch there so that the blood stem cells will generate immune cells that will go and kill the leukemia cells. And that only happens because of that level of mismatch that's there. You don't get that. You don't get that if you put the child's own stem cells back in. You lose that, it's called a graft versus leukemia effect.
Yes.
So you're actually getting an immune targeting of the leukemia by the stem cells you put in. So you lose that if you put the child's own stem cells in. And then you've got the added risk, like you say, of the not really knowing whether there was I mean, as we get better at working out these predisposition type things, we'll be able to tell that better. But like you say, you put the child's own stem cells back in, you don't know whether in 10 years' time the leukemia will come back. So I don't think a clinician would use stored cord blood from a patient to transplant the patient. I don't think that would. I think they'd be very reluctant to do that.
Yeah. It's good to know. I just wish that we in SA had the same options of donating it to the bank. I don't know if we can now, but definitely when we had the boys, there wasn't an option to be able to donate that. And with, so many different, combinations out there, maybe, there could be more matches. And
it's very disappointing. You can't donate your cord in Adelaide. You can there's a bank in Sydney and you can donate there, and I think from some other states, but you can't donate your cord from having birth here. But that whole banking
can change.
It's a bit controversial, that whole banking of cord blood when your baby's born. That's a tricky one. I mean, there are lots of important types of cells in cord blood, and as treatments and studies go on, it's possible that there will be stem cells of some description in the cord that might be useful in other diseases even down the track. So it's a lot of money to put down to store your cord, and you're really relying on it being stored well and being there in 30 years' time or whatever. I think it's a risky undertaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, that's very, very personal thing, and
Sorry, we were doing that. I just went down that tunnel. So as a team, obviously, we are so honoured to stand behind you and help drive this critical research forward. So, what are your goals for the future, and what impact do you hope to achieve?
Look, it's we're really honoured. Firstly, I want to say we're really honoured that you chose to support us. That's meant a lot to us. And
it was an easy decision, Richard. It was a very easy decision.
Yeah, look, we have a few sort of broadish goals, I guess. I mean, we want to, obviously, we've established one of the things that it's allowed us to do, the Charlie's Rainbow funding and the grants that we've managed to get, has allowed us to build some really important collaborations. So I think we need to really make sure we build on them, develop them, and make get the childhood AML research happening collaboratively and really strong across the groups in Australia that are interested in it. So certainly want to build on those collaborations and the relationship we have with people like Andy Moore, the clinicians in the field, and the people at Zero. So that's really important. So I think the other thing I really want to do is to improve treatment and outcomes for relapsed AML. I've talked to you about that before. The patients that relapse obviously have a really bad time. It's very hard to treat, and it's still 30-odd% of childhood AML where you have relapse. I mean, 70% of kids do okay, but for the ones that relapse, it's, as you know, it's a horrible journey.
Yeah,
so
a lot of families out there, we don't believe in the numbers anymore.
No,
it's just been heartbreaking with so many that have relapsed, and
So I think the immunotherapy is really important for that, and continuing discussions with people like Andy, who are obviously on the front line with all of this. But the immunotherapy is something that needs to, if we can, come up with a way of bringing that into play somehow in treatment for childhood AML. I think that's where it's going to come into play, is going to be helping kids that are at risk of relapse or kids that have relapsed and that sort of thing. I think it's really important we have some sort of immunotherapy developing for that setting. So that's a really important goal of us to keep that working. And then the other thing that's really important to me is just using the Charlie's Rainbow funding for the early and mid-career researchers that make the choice to get into childhood AML, because it's a challenging field to get into. As you know, it's a rare disease. There's a lot of unique challenges working in rare diseases like childhood AML. So people like Salmia did and other people make the choice to get into that field. I want to be able to support them and make sure they're in a supportive environment, stimulating environment. They've got all the links they need, all the collaborative networks they need, so that they can actually make a career out of it. Because it's a challenging area to work in. Research is a very competitive environment. If you're working on a rare disease like childhood AML, you've got challenges there, and we've got some really brilliant young scientists around, so we need to encourage them and make sure we can support them to play in that area. So that's a really important goal of mine as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, Richard, are you allowed to talk about what's happening with COPs for Kids?
COPs for Kids, yeah. No, look, absolutely. That was, well, I'm not sure whether there's any embargo or anything there, maybe until the event, which is whenever it is next week.
Yeah.
Look, no, that was a great connection you made for us there. So, yeah, what happened there was, one of the things with the immunotherapy I'm talking about for the childhood AML, Bhumika's project, and there's another group on this floor work on childhood brain cancer, and you're looking at immunotherapy for that. That involves obviously a lot of culturing of cell, even just the research, let alone the clinical trials, but even just researching the approaches requires a lot of culture of patient cells. And patient cells are very tricky to work with, so we need a sort of a tissue culture facility that is well equipped, that these groups can do their work in. And we were struggling on this floor in our building because there's a huge amount of tissue culture goes on in this floor. And we had a room here that was basically, when the building was set up, it didn't get completed. It was sort of there as a sort of a room for tissue culture, but it had no equipment and it wasn't fitted out. So when you put us onto the COPs for Kids, we had a chat with, who was it, Drew, I think we talked to. He very much liked the idea of helping set that facility up as a tissue culture room for childhood, to look at these childhood immunotherapies. So that's what we've done. We've got $30,000 from COPs for Kids, and the university essentially matched that to make sure the fit out was all happened, and we've got that set up now. So we have a new COPs for Kids tissue culture room, which is there to support the brain cancer work and the childhood AML work. So yeah, that's been brilliant. And we're having an official opening for that next week, I think, which you're invited to.
Amazing. Yes. So Jen, I know you'll be watching, so shout out to you, because we couldn't have actually even known about this without you. So we really, really appreciate that. Jen is one of my salon clients. And one of our neighbours. So really, really appreciate that. Because we couldn't be doing that without you as well. So Richard, do you have any sort of parting words or anything else you want to let everybody know?
Oh, look, no, I think I've probably said enough. Look, like I said, the work's going well. The new staff members that we hired, like I say, in the last 12 months have been great. They're both really getting their teeth into things. They've been great for the group, and we're developing some really good interactions with other groups now, both in Melbourne and with the Zero group. That work's going well. The Cancer Australia grant's going well. So I feel pretty positive about all the childhood AML work. I think, we'll keep pushing hard, and I think we'll build that research area, not just in Adelaide, but, across Australia, hopefully, with a lot of interest in that area, and keep it moving.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and giving us your time as well. Really, really appreciate that. Anyone watching, if you have got any questions or anything that you want to ask Richard, you can pop them below, and I will send them across to Richard at some stage and get some answers for you. I'm sure that you're happy to respond to those for me, Richard.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
beautiful. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for joining the challenge. It's been amazing. See ya.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.